Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. On Wednesday, Austria and Portugal have secured non-permanent seats on the UN Security Council for the 2027 to 2028 term, edging out Germany in a closely watched vote at the UN General Assembly. Now, Germany failed to reach the required two-thirds majority, marking its first ever loss in a Security Council bid despite an intensive diplomatic campaign. We'll now discuss how this impacts Europe's voice at the UN with Heinz Gärtner, Professor of Political Science from the University of Vienna. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
So looking at the breakdown as we have it now with the votes, Portugal, in terms of the Europeans, not just for the others, but 134 for Portugal, 131 for Austria, 104 for Germany. Just generally, how do you read this as a professional, as a diplomat, perhaps? What is the main message here of that result?
I guess the main message is that the member states of the General Assembly prefer smaller states. So they do less intervention and they are less threatening. It's remarkable that both small states have been elected and not a mix between one small state and Germany. So the smaller states are seen to be more flexible, better in providing good services, and especially Austria's neutrality can also provide additional assets as mediator. So I do think Germany is seen to be as a too big power already militarily, and in Europe is the biggest military power in Europe, and to give Germany an additional diplomatic power has been seen as too much for most of the states in the General Assembly, as election results tell us.
Yeah, but also interesting because if we're looking at the 10 members of these temporary members, but then the permanent members, the 5 of them, those are all major countries, so interesting dynamic there. But one thing I just want to get your sense, you said it's a victory for sort of smaller states, maybe multilateralism, but at the same time, Germany's foreign minister saying that there were headwinds against him. How much did the, let's say, factor of the war in Ukraine, Germany's foreign policy, did that play any role in terms of them not getting? I mean, it's the first time that Germany did not get this temporary seat.
I think what the German foreign minister said sounds like an excuse, because Austria more or less had the same foreign policy towards Ukraine as Germany had. So Austria was elected, Germany not. So it doesn't have anything to do with the issue of Ukraine. So I think there are more structural reasons and not so much the policy reason what the German foreign minister claims to be.
All right. At the same time, you see their jubilation. I think that was the Austrian delegation there. With the result of this, I'm also curious, I mean, looking at structure, let's look at the UN Security Council. I mean, that body is really the only one that can have where decisions are made that are binding, also veto power by those big 5. I mean, there's a lot of criticism that this whole body is really stuck in terms of when it comes to making big decisions. How relevant is an inclusion now with these temporary member states? Is the UN Security Council still relevant in its current fashion?
It is, because there are many issues which can be dealt with, and you need not necessarily expect a veto. That's only the big ones, the big issues like Ukraine or Middle East. By the way, also Germany is seen as to be too close to Trump's Israel policy. That might have been another factor. But there are issues which Austria, for example, can really meet. And for example, Austria is the only country in the European Union that has basically the same status as most of the states of the global south. It's non-aligned and is a non-nuclear weapon state. And Austria was a big sponsor of the Treaty of the prohibition of nuclear weapons. And probably the next Secretary General will focus on non-proliferation. And here Austria, for example, has an asset to contribute to non-proliferation. And also the big powers in the Security Council, they all would support non-proliferation issues.
You mentioned Austria now on the bigger picture of non-aligned nations. The neutrality is still enshrined in its constitution, but at the same time, practically, with Austria now in its current form, I mean, members of the European Union, is there really, truly such a sense anymore as neutrality in these days in Europe?
Of course, neutral states have several possibilities. Of course, they have to be, first and foremost, they have to be useful and credible. And if they want to be respected by big powers, they always have to say, I will remain neutral and I can offer something. So I can offer, as I said, good services in mediation, hosting international meetings, and Austria is also, and that's the reason for that is neutrality, hosting international organizations, and Austria is the only headquarter in the European Union, UN headquarter in the European Union. So that's, of course, an asset. And the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, is here in Vienna. So neutrality can provide some assets also for the big players in the Security Council.
But at the same time, I mean, I know this goes back a little ways, a few years, but still, I have to ask you because, I mean, Austria touts this neutrality, but at the same time, not that long ago, we had a foreign minister, Ms. Kneißl, who very much was close to Russia. Austria traditionally close to Russia. Vladimir Putin at her wedding, this was a few years back, but nevertheless, does that not make it difficult to say that Austria is completely neutral in all this, or is that something now that's shifted in your mind?
Austria neutrality is the neutrality towards wars. So Austria is not supposed to take part in foreign wars and not to join military alliances. So no matter which big power is behind a military alliance or which power is fighting wars. So Austria has actually the obligation to try to mediate in foreign conflicts. I don't think Austria played this role in the past, as you said, good enough. So because Austria could have more promoted the idea of a two-states solution, for example. Austria's former Chancellor Bruno Kreisky was basically the first Western statesman who brought the idea of the two-state solution before the United Nations. So, but Austria did not really follow up at this and left basically the Middle Eastern issue to Trump and Netanyahu. So Austria could play a role if it really takes the obligation and the possibility it has.
All right. So then one final quick one in terms of now, what does this all mean with Portugal and Austria representing the European voice in the United Nations Security Council, just briefly?
Yeah, of course, both are members of the European Union, and they will coordinate decisions with the European Union. They will not go they will not go alone with their decisions, but they can offer possibilities what other European Union states cannot do. Of course, there will be lots of diplomacy before going into the talks in the Security Council within the members of the European Union.
Yeah, and also interesting, I mean, Austria itself has called for reform of the United Nations. We'll see how successful that will be with this new tenure there on the Security Council. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. Always a pleasure having you. Heinz Gärtner, there, Professor of Political Science at the University of Vienna.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.